contributor to the Free Press. I think that's part of CBS now. I'm not sure. And he's the host of the Breaking History podcast, which I've looked at and listened to the first 2 minutes of, but I've saved it for my long run tomorrow morning because it's about James Comey, and I wanted to be entertained. Before we get to the Comey podcast, Eli, President Trump posted earlier today on True Social that it's now or never for Hamas, and he said, thank you for your attention to this matter, basically reiterating the clock is winding down. What do you think happens if they don't say yay or nay by the end of the day or tomorrow?
I think Israel kind of continues with the war in Gaza City and roots out the remaining Hamas leaders. And I have to say, Donald Trump is the most pro-Israel president in my lifetime. And what he managed to do was is almost as significant as joining the with Operation Midnight Hammer, the Iran war, because what he did was he took Israel's moment of isolation fresh from the UN General Assembly with American allies like the UK and Australia and France recognizing a Palestinian state, which isolated Israel. And he turned it around and got the entire Arab and most of the Muslim world, including Turkey and Qatar, to isolate Hamas. That is a diplomatic miracle. And even if you think that, some of the elements of the 21-point plan are going to be, the devil's in the details, it's going to be hard to implement. Reversing the pressure at the moment that he did is just an enormous benefit for Israel. I really do think that Trump will go down in history, in Jewish history, as a great ally.
Well, I also think that it might work because Hamas has only Iran left, and Iran has no way of helping them. So unless they all want to be martyrs, and they might want to be all martyrs, there, if you're watching on Salem News, you can see how at great length Donald Trump went to tell Hamas that release the hostages, all of them, including the bodies of those that are dead now. That's all in caps. Yeah, there's not really much more an American president can do, and he's doing it. I think I heard this on the commentary podcast, Eli, that he's doing it with 3.5 years left in his presidency is far more significant than rushing it in the last 6 months of a term.
100%. It's to me, to get Qatar and particularly Turkey, which is where the senior Hamas leaders have their safe haven at this point, to get them to agree to this is extraordinary. I mean, you could argue that, and I've been doing some reporting and reading some, great reporting from the region that, even the Turks and the Qataris are getting sick and tired of the war. But you have to look at where those countries were after October 7th. They were cheering October 7th, particularly Qatar. There have been a lot of pretty credible reports that Qataris were kind of playing a double game and urging Hamas, not to give back all the hostages. To get them to come to this point, maybe some of this was motivated by Israel's strike in Doha a few weeks ago. That's always possible, but it is turned around. I'm still kind of pinching myself. I thought it was an extraordinary week in that regard, and Trump should be very proud of this diplomatic accomplishment.
Even after the tragedy of the attack on the Manchester synagogue in London and the aftermath, it's just as bad because they had mobs cheering that in London last night. So it's London has fallen in some respects. Let me ask you, Eli, now about your Breaking History podcast. I'm really interested I don't know James Comey. We have a lot of mutual friends. He was at DOJ when I was at DOJ, but I was a junior lawyer. He was more senior. We have a lot of friends in common who told me he was a good guy when he took over the FBI. I think he might have had a mental breakdown, and I'm not sure I would have indicted him. But what is this Breaking History episode about?
It's the long kind of arc of what I say is sort of the rise and fall of a hero in his own mind. I think James Comey is one of the most sanctimonious people that I've ever covered. And he constantly kind of, he's very good at writing. He's a good communicator. So he kind of weaves a story in his own narrative to always sort of say that he's doing the right thing. But he inserted himself in the middle of our presidential politics in 2016 by with his announcements about the investigation into Hillary's emails. That was deceptive because what we know now from all of the oversight is that the FBI was actually protecting Hillary Clinton in many ways, particularly when it came to the Clinton Foundation. But his decision after Trump wins, which nobody expected, to basically kind of build a case when his own investigators were saying we're not finding anything, using the Steele dossier, not just to obtain surveillance warrants, but trying to insert that into the official intelligence community project. All of that was, really, it hobbled it hobbled the administration of the president that the American people just elected. I believe it was a real kind of, crime against our democracy in that regard. But at the same time, the case against him looks incredibly weak. And also, you know better than I, you have a law degree. This is kind of a classic case of selective prosecution because of all of the things that the president has said, the pressure he's brought to bear on his attorney general. I think that it's possible for, Comey to pay a price without being convicted of a crime, and I don't think he will be convicted of this particular crime. There may be superseding indictments that we don't know about, but I would expect
I was just
probably
about to
prevail.
say superseding indictment is why I'm
Right.
holding back judgment. Superseding indictment. False Statement Act, pretty big, and it was prosecuted against Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon for contempt of Congress, and he wasn't in contempt of Congress. So the selective prosecution argument doesn't get me, but what does get me is you don't want to fail. If you discredit, if a guy's already discredited, and Comey is, you don't want to recredit him with any kind of standing if he beats a rap. Eli Lake, I'm looking forward to the Breaking History podcast. Thank you very much. Be well. Follow Eli at